We all know hypnosis can be used to entertain or even to heal, but could it be weaponized? I mean, could you actually use it to program a brand new personality into someone and create the perfect, unbreakable spy? Well, we're going to dive right into that shadowy world where mind science and espionage collide. Okay, so picture this. It's Moscow, 1963, the height of the Cold War. At the US Embassy, American diplomats are getting sick, and not just a little sick. We're talking serious symptoms: fatigue, bleeding, and then, in a pattern that is just terrifying, 3 ambassadors in a row are diagnosed with cancer. So, naturally, the CIA kicks off a top-secret investigation they call Operation Pandora. And the suspected cause? You're not going to believe this. They thought a powerful beam of radio frequencies was being aimed directly at the embassy from a KGB building right across the street. This story even got so big it was featured in a documentary hosted by James Bond himself, the one and only Roger Moore. But how much of that is real and how much is just, Hollywood magic? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. To really understand why the KGB would even be interested in something like this, we've got to go way back to the beginning, back to the very real, very legitimate science that sort of laid the groundwork for all the wild stuff that came later. So you have these 2 giants of Russian science who saw the incredible potential of the human mind. You've got Pavlov, who figured out that our subconscious is kind of like a giant hard drive, and hypnosis is the password to get in and access all these forgotten files. And then there's Bekhterev, who was running these huge group hypnosis sessions. And get this, he was actually curing factory workers of alcoholism. This wasn't some fringe idea, this was serious, cutting-edge research getting real results. And of course, when something shows that much potential for influence, powerful people are going to notice. So, right after the revolution, the new head of the secret police, this guy Felix Dzerzhinsky, he sees what's going on. And suddenly, all this research into healing and memory gets a very powerful and very, very secretive new sponsor. Which brings us to our first case file. And this one isn't about a scientist or even a spy. It's about a famous entertainer whose career just takes this incredibly strange turn. Let me introduce you to Arnaldo. Back in the 1920s, this man was a total superstar. Seriously, think of him as the David Copperfield of the Soviet Union. His face was on posters everywhere, he was packing theaters, doing these incredible shows with mental magic and mass hypnosis. He was at the absolute top of his game. And then, poof, he's gone. Right in the middle of the 1930s, at the peak of his fame, he just cancels everything and vanishes. Now, for years, people just whispered about what happened, but here's a little detail you just can't ignore. After the war, his daughter ends up marrying Viktor Abakumov. And this isn't just some random guy. He's the head of SMERSH, the most ruthless and effective counterintelligence agency the Soviets had. I mean, what are the odds? But here's where it stops being a rumor. The famous writer Varlam Shalamov, who survived the gulags, wrote about it directly. He flat out says that Arnold Zdalo was recruited by the NKVD, the forerunner to the KGB, and that his very special set of skills was used during interrogations. The superstar magician, it seems, had become a secret weapon for the state. All right, let's jump to our next case, because this story just keeps building. We're going from a hypnotist who maybe consulted on the side to the theory of a fully programmed super spy, a true legend of the Cold War. Meet KGB Colonel Rudolf Abel. This guy was a master spy. For years, he was living deep undercover in the US, running a spy ring out of an art studio in Brooklyn, of all places. And when the FBI finally caught him, his reaction just stunned them. He was completely calm, unbreakable. He never cooperated, and the way he handled himself facing a possible death sentence, well, it became legendary in the world of espionage. So the big question is, how on earth did he do it? Now, the official story is that he was just the ultimate pro, iron will, incredible training. But there's another theory, one that suggests something way more radical was going on. The idea is that Abel went through intense, deep hypnotic conditioning to build his fake identity from the ground up, essentially creating an alternate personality that was totally immune to pressure. In the spy world, they call a fake life story a legend. But what hypnosis could theoretically do is take that to a terrifying new level. We're not talking about an agent just acting like an artist in Brooklyn. We're talking about a process that buries their real personality so deep that they truly believe they are that artist. Their cover wouldn't just be an act, it would be their reality. And that is virtually unbreakable.
But hold on, this wasn't just a Soviet thing. The Americans were terrified of a so-called hypnosis gap. And that fear led the CIA to launch its own, very real, and frankly, terrifying mind control program.
It was called Project MK Ultra. It kicked off in the 1950s, and its goal was as simple as it was chilling: to achieve total and complete control over the human mind. And to do it, the CIA used research and even scientists from Nazi Germany to experiment with drugs, psychological torture, and, you guessed it, hypnosis. So how would this even work? Well, the alleged process was like something out of a sci-fi movie. First, find someone vulnerable. Second, use a brutal cocktail of drugs like LSD and hypnosis to just shatter their personality and wipe their memory. Then you build a whole new, fake identity in its place. And the final crucial step: you implant a post-hypnotic trigger, a word, a phrase that could activate them to carry out a mission with no memory of it afterwards.
And that brings us to one of the darkest days in American history. June 5th, 1968. Senator Robert F. Kennedy has just won the California primary. He's on a clear path to the White House. And then, in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel, he's shot and killed. The man convicted of the crime? Sirhan Sirhan.
But right from the beginning, the official story had holes. Big ones. For one, Sirhan himself has always claimed he has absolutely no memory of the shooting. Decades later, audio experts found evidence of more shots being fired than his gun even held. Witnesses talked about a mysterious woman in a polka dot dress who seemed to be with him. And here's the kicker: medical experts at the time all agreed that Sirhan was incredibly easy to hypnotize. And listen to this. This is from Sirhan himself, decades later. He talks about this deep, profound blackout, not just of the assassination itself, but of the weeks leading up to it. So was he an MK Ultra assassin, a programmed killer activated by some hidden handler? It's a question that still haunts us to this day. All right, let's head back to Moscow, because these theories weren't just about creating spies to send out into the field. The whispers of hypnotic influence went all the way to the very top, inside the Kremlin itself. So in 1964, the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was suddenly kicked out of power. The history books tell us his inner circle just got fed up with his wild behavior and voted him out. Simple enough. But there is another, much darker version of that story. It claims a hypnotist was secretly placed in his inner circle to slowly wear down his willpower, and most importantly, convince him to go on vacation at the exact moment the coup was planned.
And this belief in mind control in the Kremlin goes back even further, all the way to Stalin. There are legends that he studied these mystic techniques and that his famously calm hand gestures during meetings were actually hypnotic commands, forcing total obedience. They even said that when Stalin walked into a room, Winston Churchill felt this uncontrollable urge to stand up. Was that just raw charisma? Or was it something else?
Okay, so let's take a breath. Could any of this really work? Well, here's a reality check. Modern science tells us that only about 15% of people are highly susceptible to hypnosis. So this could never be a weapon to control the masses. But if your goal is a targeted operation, to influence one key leader, to break one prisoner, or to program just one assassin, that 15% is all you'd ever need.
Look, in the end, there's no declassified memo that's going to prove any of this. If these programs existed in their wildest forms, that proof is buried deeper than anything else. But it leaves us with this really unsettling question. In the secret wars fought in the shadows, is it possible that the most powerful weapon isn't a bomb or a bullet, but a simple whisper into the subconscious mind? I'll let you decide.